Hello and welcome to my presentation on unit communications. This presentation is meant for leaders of Boy Scouts of America units such as packs and troops and crews, but it can be useful to anyone who might find this information useful. The purpose of this presentation is to have a video documentation of a course taught at our local University of Scouting. And, I wanted to make a video recording of it so that it could be shared online with anyone else who might find it useful. A bit about me. My name is Ashley. I am with Pack 136 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And in the 5 years that I have been with this BSA unit, I have served in a variety of capacities. I have been Cub Master and Assistant Cub Master, as well as Advancement Chair and Secretary, and also Communications Specialist. I maintain the website, the newsletter, and most unit communications, along with whatever else they need me to do. But the purpose of this video, I just wanted to share some of the things that I have learned in the years that I have been handling communications for my pack. And some of it is my personal experience, but some of it is also stuff that I have picked up from other scouters, both online and in person, when we discuss the various ways of communication and what works for their units and what doesn't, based on the size of the unit, the type of unit. Obviously, packs are going to have different communication needs than troops and crews and so forth. But I would also like to make this somewhat of an interactive experience. If you know of things that work for your unit that I don't mention here, leave a comment down in the comments section, because I do want to learn from others, and I don't want to be just talking at people. If I say something that you think might need some clarification, oh, well, hey, you mentioned you did this, but have you tried doing it this way? Again, leave a comment. This is about information sharing, because some of the best training that I've gotten into how to be a BSA leader has come from the experiences of others. That's what I hope to impart with this, but it's also what I hope to receive in return. So let's get started. So the objectives of this course is we want to understand the different dynamics of small and large groups and the different types of groups. As I mentioned, units of younger children are going to have different ways of communicating than units of older children. The teen scouts, they have their phone constantly in their hand. They're texting, they're video chatting. They have all these different apps, Snapchat, Instagram, that they use to communicate, Discord, which is going to be different in how they communicate versus their parents. Meanwhile, a Cub Scout unit, where obviously the scouts are not, communicating on their own devices, yet you do have to meet the parents with how they communicate. We want to develop an understanding of basic communication skills. Most of us think of ourselves as being fairly good at communicating, at least in person, having conversations, but the types of skills that we use in written communication or some other form of communication might differ from our conversational skills. So we want to make sure that we've got those bases covered as well. We want to be able to recognize the various forms of message delivery. There's a lot of ways to communicate information for your unit. You can do it in person, you can do it over text, email, you can do it over video, you can do it, over print media. I still hand out newsletters at our PAC meeting. We want to acquire insight into digital communications and how it varies, again, as we said, based on scout age. But we also want to create a smart vision for communications in our units and chapters and lodges. We want to make sure that we're using the format of communication that is going to reach the most people based on information needs. So I love this comic. The kid running off tossing the pocket knife while the parent complains, and the leader's like, oh, well, I'm just doing my best here. We aren't getting any of the PAC communications, and the leaders, which ones? Emails, text, group me, newsletter, announcement. When I first took over communications for our PAC, when my son was a tiger, at the time the PAC was really in a rebuilding situation. The Cub Master and maybe only 3 or 4 other parents were running everything. All the dens, the derbies, and just everything. There was no help, and the communications were in kind of a bit of a disarray because in the grand scheme of things, it was just one of those things that nobody seemed to have time for. So I took that over in an unofficial capacity. But there was always that one parent, and I'm sure your unit has them too, who comes up and says, I'm not getting any of the PAC communications. I don't know when anything's happening. My den went on this hike and we didn't know about it. And, and I would talk to the den leader and I'm like, well, we told everybody at the den meeting. Well, was this parent at the den meeting? No. Well, did you email him? This is a process. It's a learning process. Because again, we are all volunteers here and most of us are not professionals in running organizations. I certainly am not. I'm a librarian. I'm not used to running large groups. But one of the first things we had to handle was communications and to make sure that everybody's getting the communications. And one of the things that we discovered was that this particular parent who complained that he was never getting the communications had, when he filled out his son's application, put on there an email address he never checked. And the reason for that, and understandably so, was that he was afraid he would get a whole lot of spam, or that his inbox would be flooded with all sorts of scout stuff. That's understandable, but you do have to give us a valid way of communicating with you. The phone number was one that he almost never answered. So, it's like, okay, well, you're not getting the communications, but how would you like us to communicate with you? You don't answer the ones that you've given us. And you might suggest to some parents who have that particular concern. I've seen some families in our PAC do this. The parents actually create a Gmail for family communications. They don't put their personal emails on there. They'll put something like smithfamily@gmail.com. But one or both of the parents are always checking that email. So in that way, you avoid having your inbox, filled with spam or anything you don't want. But you do still have an email address specific to the purpose of your kids' functions that you do check. So that's a good idea, and sometimes I suggest that. But the parents do have to give us valid ways to contact them. So the basis of communication. Every form of communication contains a message, a sender, and receiver. Noise and interference can interfere with communication, especially if you're in a large hall or outside. We meet in a cafeteria, which can be kind of echoey. Thankfully, our current Cub Master has a sound system, a wireless mic that he brings. I've used a karaoke machine in the past, especially when we're out in the fields and things like that, bullhorns. But not everybody has this. Not everybody's comfortable with digital communication. In our den, Weeblos 2, we have a scout who is being raised, has been adopted by an older couple. And his older female guardian, who is his mother, she does email, and she does text, but she doesn't do things like group me or remind or video chats or other forms of communication. I often hand them printouts of the announcements and the newsletters. Likewise, also in our den, as one of the dads, he's at everything. He brings his son to everything. They're on every camp out, every hike, everything. He still has a flip phone, and he doesn't text. I mean, he does text, but it's difficult for him on this flip phone. And he openly admits he doesn't read his email. He will answer if you call him, but most of the time, if I need to text or something like that, or email something, I will send it to his wife, and she'll pass it on. So just be aware that people have different ways of communicating that they're comfortable, but you don't want to be so flexible that you have like 30 different ways of communicating. Oh, this one parent prefers smoke signals or something like that. The parents do have to meet you halfway. They do have to understand that the PAC has had, you want to adopt at least 3 official forms of communication that covers all the bases. Email, some form of communication app like GroupMe or Remind or Band. And then you want something like a print communication. I email our newsletter to everybody, but I also print it out for handing out at the PAC meetings, and I also print out announcements because nobody ever pays attention during announcements. You also want to have a passive form of communication that recipients can refer back to, like a website or social media, or again, a printout. A printout is something that can be slapped up on the refrigerator. A website is something they can refer back to. We have a website. I maintain it. I put up as much information on there as I can. I have digital copies of the Den Leader Guides, the handbooks, all the requirements for all the ranks. I have YouTube videos that I have found that I thought might be helpful. Like with the first responder for the Webelos 1, I found a bunch of YouTube videos on how to dress wounds and what to do for shock and things like that that they can refer back to. And it's a lot easier to email a link to a website for a parent who needs, extensive information rather than having to spell it all out on an email they might not read. We also have our calendar, our Google Calendar, up on the website. We created a Gmail for PAC Communications, and we put all of our events on that Google Calendar, which is then on the website. We do use Scoutbook, but less so, because with Google Calendars, the parents can subscribe to them, and then the calendar shows up on their phone. So we prefer that, although we do make use of Scoutbook's calendar for reminders and for communications. But again, with our PAC, we ran into a situation where, people were not giving us good email addresses. So that was what was in Scoutbook. And we found Scoutbook to be kind of buggy with communication. So we don't use it as much, but we do make some use of it. But again, the parents do have to meet you halfway. They have to realize, okay, the PAC is going to communicate using these set methods, these 3 or 4 methods. And if I don't do any of those, then, be advised, you're going to miss communications. There really should not be a reason for somebody not to go to a website. Almost everybody, no matter how technologically impaired you might be, should have the capacity to get to a website. You can't cater to every need. So this needs to be a two-way thing between the leadership and the parents. So I love this cartoon on communication, and that is why we lift on 3. Communication is essential. Every Scout unit has had communication issues at some point. Aside from those 3 or 4 families that never seem to, know what's going on or anything like that, your forms of communication can go down. I mean, every single person watching this video has had Scoutbook blink out on them at some point. Or your email gets bounced, or, the website goes down. It's something. Or in our case, the sound system not working at a PAC meeting. In conversations with other Scout leaders, communications is one of the most commonly listed problems. In conversations in person and online, there's always, at least once a week, somebody saying, oh, the communications issue this or this or this. But it's important to remember that no matter how you communicate, what you say and how you say it matters. We've had leadership in our unit in the past where, in their workplaces, they're used to being very commanding. They're used to maybe barking orders or, saying something and people automatically agreeing. Well, you can't really carry that kind of communication style into a large organization meant for children, staffed by volunteers, because most commonly the response is, no, you're not going to talk to me that way. But the thing is, what these folks were saying was not irrelevant. It was important information, but it was how they were saying it. You want to consider various communication channels that you check on a daily basis. What do you check on a daily basis? Apps, email, social media. When you pick up your phone, a couple times a day, what are the apps that you open from which you communicate with the people you need to communicate with? Most of us text. I'm on several group text chats with family, friends. I'm on Facebook. But that's me. I know that my teenage niece, basically lives on Snapchat. I don't really use Snapchat. I don't really personally have a use for it. But if my child belonged to a unit that made use of Snapchat for its primary communications, I would concede that I had to install it and make use of it in order to get these forms of communication. The right communication for your PAC or unit might differ from a troop, right down to dens and patrols. How the overall unit communicates might be different from how dens and patrols communicate. you have to take into consideration what everybody is comfortable using. And as I said before, there will always be that one family, trademark, who never gets any communication, is always out of the loop, but you need to work with them, but don't tailor the proceedings to their needs. In the case of the parent who kept coming to me and saying, I'm never getting the communications, finally, after about the third time, I started getting a little irritated with them, and I'm like, well, how are you not getting there? What email address? And he said, oh, well, I never checked that email. And I was like, what do you want me to do? Knock on your door? You got to meet me halfway here. In the end, he ended up giving me an email address that he did sometimes check, but it was his responsibility to meet us with that. We weren't going to tailor, our communications to his particular needs. But he, we did finally find a medium where he was able to start getting the unit communications. And don't forget the phone. We're kind of a disconnected society these days, and we love to text because, almost everybody under the age of 25 is really uncomfortable talking on the phone because they've always texted or, maybe even other forms of communication. But some older individuals, people over 35 or 40, are still somewhat comfortable talking on the phone and might prefer a phone call, especially if it's time sensitive. So you want to evaluate your needs. What apps do you already use? As we said before, schools and sports teams use platforms that many parents, I meant to say parents, not platforms, are already on. In our case, the majority of PAC 136 Scouts, at least 2/3 of them attend St. George Catholic School, which is an adjunct of the Catholic Church, which is our charter organization. Most of the class communications for St. George School and individual classes happen on GroupMe. Although leadership preferred other platforms, I actually found Band to be far more superior than GroupMe with far more features that we could use. It was decided to use GroupMe for PAC communications because all the parents were already on it. By the time your kid makes it to second grade at St. George School, you've got to be on GroupMe because that's how the class moms communicate. That's how they send out, alerts and reminders. Oh, hey, a test canceled tomorrow, or, the field trip's canceled because we couldn't get buses. They email, but the immediate alerts happen on GroupMe. So because so many of our families, more than half of the PAC, was already using GroupMe for school-related things, we decided to go with GroupMe. So you also want to consider, as I said before, that some scouts are in different situations, being raised by grandparents who are not comfortable with digital communications or apps. Some people, no matter who they are, prefer printout communications at PAC meetings. Some only check their email. Some never go to the website, never go to social media, never go to GroupMe. They only check their email. So if you are conducting planning meetings for the coming year, communication should be part of what you discuss. If you're using Scoutbook for calendars or emailing everyone, this platform might be good for your unit. But the DENs might prefer, or the patrols might prefer individual communications like GroupMe or Discord or something like that. Scoutbook does not allow for instant communication answers as of yet that I'm aware of, and GroupMe does. Parent might show up at a meeting place on the wrong night. We discovered the value of having instant communications on our first campout this year. We were told when we arrived at Avondale to come in through the north gate, and this was confirmed several times. We went back and forth with the staff, and they're like, yes, north gate, north gate. But when we got there, we discovered that we couldn't come in the north gate because there was a problem with the road. We were going to have to come in the south gate. Well, most of the families were already en route. So since I had gotten there first, I sent out an alert on the GroupMe. Hey, don't come in the north gate. We can't get down the road. Come in the south gate. Here's the GPS coordinates. Plug that into your phone. I also emailed everyone. And it still didn't reach everybody. About 1/3 of our PAC had to come, ended up at the north gate and got sent around. But it reached enough people to where they were able to switch where they had to come in the south gate. And they were also asking questions. What campsite are we at? Even though we had printouts at the last PAC meeting, so we're at this campsite. You need to be able to communicate with people, especially if you've got an event coming up or ongoing. People will use those instant forms of communications for the quick questions they have that need to be answered right away. So take that into account when you're doing your planning meetings. So how you address a live group is going to differ from how you address perhaps a virtual group. You always want to prepare. You want to develop an outline or plan for the main points. For our PAC meetings, we always have an agenda. We, okay, we're going to start with the opening. We're going to do the oath and pledge and law, and then we're going to have, the announcements, and we follow this outline with points underneath each one. Okay, make sure you mention this. And we still have printouts that we hand people at the live group meeting. But understand who your audience is and what their characteristics are, like their age, their position, gender, ethnicity, language. All of that matters. Determine your delivery method. Are you going to lecture? Are you going to do a demonstration? Are you going to do a panel? Our current Cub Master has a projection screen that he uses to do a slideshow at every PAC meeting, and that helps tremendously because we can have this big screen up in front of everybody from which we are projecting a computer image, and there, the slideshow will have the announcements, it'll have the pictures that we want to show. We'll put up, the advancements for each den. These folks earn these advancements, and that helps a lot. The people are very visual these days, and if you're addressing a live group, you want to have something for them to focus on. Verbal announcements should always be followed up with digital and print announcements. When we do announcements at our meetings, sometimes we forego saying them out loud entirely. We have printouts of the announcements, and we do this because our unit has children from kindergarten through 5th grade. And the kindergartners are wiggling, and the 4th graders are, having thumb wrestling contest over on one table. And we do get their attention, but they immediately melt right back down again. And it can be difficult to get announcements out when there's so much, wiggling going on, and the parents are trying to make them hold still. And, we will do announcements. Oh, hey, Pinewood Derby coming up this weekend. But we will also print out those announcements. And I put the older kids to work. I'll grab a couple of Weeblos and tell them, hand these out to the moms and dads. So we make sure we put those announcements in their hand. We used to put them out on a table at the door for people to grab, but at the end of the meetings, I would discover that, I still had a stack of papers and nobody had taken them. So I find that when you put it in their hand, get the older kids to hand out the announcements, put it in their hand, they'll at least bring it home and they might look at it. Of course, we can't handhold. People are responsible for obtaining the information we're offering. But, having things in print to follow up what you say definitely helps because attention spans are incredibly short these days. So if you have a small group, 2 to 15 people, perhaps a patrol or a den meeting or something like that, it's generally more relaxed in scouting settings. They're usually seen you see them in patrols, lodge executive committees, chapter settings. But it allows for more interaction with each audience member. If you've got a small group, it's easier to be more conversational. You can allow other people to talk without too much disruption. Can't really do that in larger groups, but it allows for easier settings for demonstrations and simulations, or other preparation-intensive delivery methods are more effective, especially like hands-on. If you've got something that you want them to do and it's hands-on, it's easier to do in smaller group settings. A larger group, like 30 to 100 plus people, as with, overall troop, or in our case, we have 75 kids in the pack and they bring their parents, and that's a lot of people in one group for our pack meetings. Very common in lodge, troop, or pack activities, camporees, and section conclaves. Trainers or the speakers are going to be less likely to interact with each audience member just because there's so many. These usually take the form of lectures, panels, maybe round robins if So digital communications. The basis of these are the web, mobile, and electronic communications. They are common and critical. This is how we communicate in the current era. And anyone who is not on board with this is going to fall behind, even with you providing print resources or website resources, passive resources. If somebody is not digital, if they're not receiving emails, then the only other ways you have to, connect with them are calling them on the phone or print. And these are time consuming and in some cases costly if you don't have access to, printers and things like that. If somebody is going to be joining a scouting unit in the 21st century, they do need to have some form of digital communication. Social media, email, and other mass communication tools are the response to this. You want to identify the platform which will be used for types of communications. In our unit, emails are typically official announcements. We don't conduct lengthy conversations over email. Email is usually sent from the PAC Gmail, and it's usually some member of the committee making an announcement or imparting information. But general conversation happens on the GroupMe. We'll make the same announcements and calendar postings and things like that on GroupMe to make sure everybody sees it. We don't have everybody always checking their email. But, questions get asked in that format, answers, conversations, even joking and things like that. That tends to happen on the app. Remember that some communications allow conversations to go on for a length of time, just as I said, between a handful of people. But this can usually result in some people muting the conversation and forgetting to unmute it, and they end up missing essential announcements. So don't just rely on that. We discovered with the GroupMe that some of the parents like to have long conversations with each other. Oh, when we were bears, we did this, and there was that skunk that wandered into the campsite, and those are fun. You can have conversations like that. But this conversation ended up going on between about 5 people for maybe about 30 to 40 messages, and that caused some people to mute GroupMe. And this was before the infamous campout with the Northgate Southgate fiasco. So the people who had muted the conversation did not unmute it and didn't get the announcement that, hey, we need to come in through the Southgate instead of the Northgate. So that was one of the problems, at least which was told to me once everybody arrived at the campsite. So just kind of be aware of that. But again, they're adults. They're responsible for maintaining their communication. But it's one of the reasons why you should not just rely on one platform. And it is one of the reasons why I emailed everybody the gate change in addition to posting it on the GroupMe. So if you need to send out, alerts or announcements, make sure you use at least 2 forms of communication. So email is the cornerstone of communication these days. It's the staple in digital communications and has a variety of options. Everyone in the committee and every parent in the unit should have an email account that they actively use and check. I've mentioned the wayward parent before, but I do, want to remind people that if you have a situation where you don't want communications going to your personal email, then create a family use email for the kids' extracurricular activities that you do check. You can set that up on your phone. Most phones these days allow for multiple inboxes. So that is a way to keep it separate from your family or your personal email, but you're still getting the communications from the unit. You should have an official email for the unit committee that everyone on the committee can access. Our PAC has, as I mentioned before, a Gmail account for, it's PAC 136 St. George, something like that. And all the key 3, the Cub Master, Assistant Cub Master, and committee chair have access to this. As communications and former, key 3, I still have access to this. So whenever, we need to send emails out, I have access and I can send it to all the email addresses that we have on file for the parents. But you should always make sure that you sign that email so they know who it's coming from. When the Cub Master uses that email, he signs it with his name and as Cub Master. When I use it, I sign it with my name and secretary. And likewise for everybody else who sends the communication from that email. but it also gives the parents one place they can go to, they can send a message to, where it will probably be seen by whoever needs to see it. The style and how you address your recipients are all factors when sending an email. Do not send lengthy emails. This is where we start getting into communication skills. People like skimmable resources. That we've moved into a scenario with reading online where we like things like bullet points. We like skimmable, quickly absorbable information. Most of us do not take time to even scroll through a website article. We just kind of skim it. So if you send lengthy emails with lots of paragraphs and things like that, you're going to lose them about halfway through if they're interested in it. You want to try to keep emails short. You want to keep paragraphs to maybe 3 or 4 sentences. Use bullet points or numbers because that draws the eye in and it allows for skimming. It's still reliable, but email tends to be less impactful to some people. Packet communications might run into filters and get, routed to the junk folders. They're easy to tune out or get accidentally read and not marked unread. But it's good as a follow-up to any verbal or other communication. So if you make an announcement at the unit meeting and you say, and you follow it up with an email, that's usually a way of kind of nailing the point home. So this is an example of an email sent from our Cub Master to the families before he learned to kind of trim his, and he told us this is trimmed. He actually had a lot more information on there that he managed to cut out. Now this is an announcement about the fated campout. You can see this is pertinent information. I mean, it's very difficult to whittle down something like this. It's got the agenda, it's got the date, it's got the times. So this is pertinent information. This is and you notice here it says down here, report to the front entrance of Camp Avondale. And we ended up having to frantically tell people come to the south entrance. But this is still important and you may not be able to avoid sending emails like this for big events like campouts and things like that. You're going to want to send the agenda. You're going to want to send this information. But when it comes to sending emails about, we've got training opportunity, we've got shooting event coming up, we've got Cub Scout camp coming up, you want to try to keep that as short as possible. Advise at the end of the message, please let us know if you have any questions. Maybe put up a website about it with the link and have them refer back to it. Please check the website. Please do this. Because when you start doing lengthy emails like this, you kind of start losing them, and it makes your eyeballs kind of run together and things like that. You may not be able to get out of sending a lengthy email like this, but don't make it the habit. You want to have shorter and more concise messaging. Mass text. We don't typically do this in my unit, but I know some units do, some smaller units where you have maybe 30 families, and you've got, at least one parent on a massive text. It's quick, it's instantaneous. They're very effective for both scouts and their parents. Older scouts and troops might find this useful. You can push the information into the hands of the receiver. It's easy to administrate and have users set up once they signed up. Some people don't have any other forms of digital communication, or you may not have their email address. But you might also consider that this is going to the wrong phone number. We had a new family start this year, and the phone number they gave us was the phone number of the dad who never checked his texts. So we had a hard time getting a hold of them and, managed to finally get the number they did check. But it ended up all these messages were going to the wrong phone number. This is good for people, 13 a number of 13 people or less. Anything more than 15 and it starts getting kind of convoluted. It's good for dens and patrols. By the time my son made it to Weeblos 2, we had started 19 kids in our level and we graduated 5 to the troop. By the time we got to 5th grade, we were just basically on a group text at that point. We do have a group me for the den, but one of the parents was not on it, and we found that that when we were discussing activities that we were doing or requirements that the kids still had to do, that they were missing out on those. So I found that just, putting everybody's numbers into a group text and sending it, and amounted to maybe 8 people, that was far more effective for us. It's good for instant communication. Again, go to, the north gate of Avondale is closed, go to the south gate. If we had not had so many families in our pack, I might have sent out a mass text instead of a group me. But honestly, I wasn't sure if my phone could handle it. And I didn't have everybody's numbers when I got there. I was on the group meet though, so that was instantaneous. But in the future, having a group text with all the parents on it might be something to consider if you have a unit that's smaller than 80 families. If your unit is 30 or less, you might be able to get away with this as a form of quick communication. Social media. Every unit should have some form of social media presence. It should be constantly evolving and needs to be treated as such. There's several. There's Slack, GroupMe, Band, WhatsApp, Remind, Discord, Facebook groups. Some of these apps and social media have tools that others don't have. So consider your own unit needs. Again, I'm not against GroupMe. I use it, but I found that Band was a more superior messaging app than GroupMe, because it had things like checklist, polls, sign-up sheets, photo sharing, RSVP functions, calendars. GroupMe does have calendars and things like that, but I found that Band had more features that we were more likely to use. However, we ended up not using it because, again, most of the parents were already on GroupMe. We do have a Facebook group, and it does get some traffic, but it's really not a primary form of communication for us. I am in charge of it, and I do need to do more with it, but it is a means of being able to communicate with the pack. So if we've got people who are interested in joining and they find us on social media, they can send a message through Messenger, which I get, and I can then email them from the pack email. So it does kind of serve that purpose, but in the future I do want to do more with the PAC's Facebook. Just be advised when you do things with Facebook or public access groups, sharing pictures of children, you want to make sure you clear it with their parents first. One of the advantages to things like GroupMe or Band is the only people who are going to see these pictures are the ones who are subscribed to it. So if you don't want other people's children plastered all over the internet, just kind of be wary of the kind of pictures you put up on your social media. But people can like or heart a message to show that they read it. And with these things, you keep too deep leadership when communicating with youth and youth officers. I ran into this when we had the scouts from the Girls Troop 1136 come and help us with our Pinewood Derby. It was pure chaos. People were showing up late with their cars, trying to get weighed in and everything like that. So I set the girls to work signing people in, while I ran back and forth between the sign-in desk in the lobby and the track in the gym. Because we had a program that runs the track, and we were entering in names. But I found the easiest thing to do would be to have one of the scouts just periodically take a picture of the sign-in sheet and text it to me so that it could be entered in the next room. And it was actually the scout who pointed out, we should go ahead and put the Cub Master on this text so we have too deep leadership. The scout thought of it. I had never even, it didn't even occur to me because I don't communicate with the Cub Scouts. I communicate with their parents. But with the older scouts, yeah, you should have 2 adults at all times in any communications with the youth. So I was glad she thought of that, and we did set up a group text between myself and the Cub Master and the scouts who were checking in people. But the thing is, this is actually covered with things like GroupMe and Discord and stuff like that. As long as you have 2 parents or 2 adults on this conversation, then you can have these conversations. So these are just some examples of different types of communication and what they look like. They look pretty similar to each other. There's not a whole lot of difference between them, except, as I mentioned, a couple of different features. But this is what you would see if you had these on your phone. I believe the one all the way to the left is band. Then you have Group Me, WhatsApp, and then I forget what this one is. The one all the way to the right, I think it might be Remind. But this is what they look like, and you can have different groups for different communication needs. On Group Me, we have an overall pack group that everyone's subscribed to, and then we have individual smaller groups for the dens. You want the Cub Master and probably the Assistant Cub Master subscribed to all of those, not just their own dens, but the other ones so that they can answer questions quickly. And encourage parents to ask questions on the general group because it might be a question that a parent in another den has that can be answered in just one place. So your website, so there's a lot going around social media right now about, I think the most recent discussion is Cub Scouts and camping, that Cub Scouts are not allowed to camp more than one night overnight. Well, this is news to most of us, because a lot of us have been camping 2 nights over a weekend with our Cub Scouts. But there's also been a lot of other things like the NOVA Awards. There was a change in the NOVA STEM Awards offered by National, and the rumor that was going around was that they were being discontinued. In essence, they are just not being supported by National anymore. They're being supported at the regional level. But there was a lot of misinformation going around. So just remember, if it's not on scouting.org, it's probably a rumor. It might not be, but verify it with official channels first. Your unit website, though, should hold the information to commonly asked questions. I have a video about our pack for new parents that I've put up on our website that I usually refer our new parents to. It explains, about where our pack meets, what district and unit and council that we belong to. It's all stuff pertinent to Pack 136. And this information is specific to us is up on our website, along with some general stuff that, pertains to any scouting unit. Our website, as I said before, hosts our Google Calendar, where if we change the time or location of anything, it's immediately reflected in that calendar. Use the unit's website. Set up a Wix account or WordPress. Ours is on WordPress. These are both free. We save pertinent documents in the pack's email Google Drive. There are several PDFs that we use for tracking advancements at each level. Like the Lions have one, the Tigers have one. It's basically a roster you can fill out, and next to each name is all the requirements. You check it off as they do it. We do use Scoutbook, but I always encourage people to use paper copies because Scoutbook can be buggy. So we've put all of these PDFs in the Google Drive. The pack operational manual, various spreadsheets that we've used to keep track of derbies and things like that. Those are all in our Google Drive so that, the upcoming leadership behind us can access it. We use Google Docs and Forms to set up voting polls and sign-up sheets. Our Pinewood Derby design contest was hosted, I believe, on a Google Forms. External, have a way for people to find you. You want to be accessible to your parents. They should have access to some, either the pack email, or if you feel comfortable giving out your phone number. It depends. You have to judge that for your unit. But have a way for them to contact you, especially at a moment's notice if they need to. So this is just some quick screenshots of our website that I'll just scroll through. This is our home page. Our website is not pretty. I'm not a web designer. I'm a librarian, so I'm good at rounding up information, but I'm not really good at making it pretty. So I'm still trying to get some of the dads to, the ones who told me that they have web design, experience. I'm like, great, you've just volunteered as webmaster. Awesome. But on our website, we list our, our committee who holds the current chairs. And it's not completely up to date. We did have some people leave after recharter. But we also have, a way to email the committee. As you see that hyperlink there, that goes immediately to our PAC email. We have a parent resources area. These hyperlinks go to national websites telling about the program, youth protection, the requirements for Protect Yourself. But further down, we start getting into stuff specific to our PAC. Like our PAC has, it has a Venmo, so there's instructions on how to send money to the PAC using Venmo or Zelle. It tells a bit about our charter organization, St. George, about our council. And further down, there's more information about the new parents, for the new parents, the guides that are presented by the BSA. More about the Scout Store and how to find it. But what I did here, further down on the parent resources page, each one of these, well, of course I have the Bobcat requirements and more about Protect Yourself, but each one of these logos for the ranks, if you click on them, goes to a rank specific page. And on those rank specific pages are things that are needed as requirements for that rank. So for example, the bears. If you click on the bear logo back here, it will take you to this page. And the first thing that you see is a welcome video, describing what goes on at bear rank and what's expected of them. But there's also, as you see down there, a hyperlink to the handbook for the Cub Scouts. Now, I really like the 30-day challenge thing that was issued during the pandemic when people were scouting at home. And the idea behind it is if you do one activity per day for 30 days, you would get the majority of your requirements for your rank done. We have some people who, miss a lot of den meetings and things like that. So I put that up there on each one of the rank pages for each rank so that they would know what activities they could do at home to help make requirements. And of course, more, if they click on that Protect Yourself requirement link, it'll take them to the age-specific Protect Yourself video that they need to watch. But for each requirement, and I'm sorry, this is a little skewed, for each requirement, there was a council somewhere that made YouTube videos for each Cub Scout requirement for each rank. And they're really good videos. I think that was somebody's wood badge project. So I linked those specific videos for each requirement for each rank to the section which describes those requirements. I tell people all the time, please get a print copy of the handbook. This is your personal record. They're going to need one when they get the troop, and the troop starts tracking using the handbook method. But we still have people who are not sure if they're going to stay in scouting. Their kid is really young, so they don't get the handbook, but they still, ask, well, what does my kid have to do for this? We missed the meeting. What do we have to do? So I put all these requirements up on each rank page so that they could have something to refer to. And of course, these things exist elsewhere on the internet in an official capacity. But I did the linking to the YouTube video so that they could watch them at home and do those activities at home along with the video. And if they click on, like the hyperlink below the builder, it will bring them to the checklist of requirements that they need that they can fill out, print out and fill out and give to their den leaders to get credit for that requirement. Another thing, like with bear claws, the whittling chip is a fairly extensive thing. It should be done in person. But there are YouTube videos going over the concepts of the whittling chip and how to do things properly. The theory behind it being is that if you are quarantining or for some reason you're not able to get to a whittling chip in person thing, you can follow along with the videos and do them at home. And I've created a whittling chip course PDF that people can open and download the booklet to follow along as well. And, I didn't go into as much detail with the electives, but they are hyperlinked to the official scouting page for those requirements if anybody wanted to do them. And here's our calendar, which is also on our website, with instructions on how to subscribe to the calendar on people's phones. So I found this to be incredibly helpful. The first 3 months, all the new families hear me say, look at the calendar, subscribe to the calendar. Did you check the calendar? Usually by about December, we have all the new families subscribed to our calendar. So anytime there's some kind of change, we immediately note it in the Google Calendar, and they immediately see it on their phone calendars. And I have resources for the leaders as well. The BSA has, a wealth of orientation and training videos for the leaders, but I created one that I put on our leader resources page specific to St. George unit leaders. Because St. George has its own requirements for people working with youth in addition to the BSA requirements for adult leaders. And I also wanted to do some kind of orientation that I could, typically in the past I tried to have in-person den leader orientations in the early part of the year, late part of summer, but I found that people just weren't coming to them. They claimed they were too busy, they had other things going on. So once again, I created this video of all the things that I wanted to tell them at those orientation meetings, because I was also at the time involved with adult leader training, that they could refer to. And of course they don't watch it, but they don't, anytime they say, well, I didn't know it was this, I can say, well, it's in the video on the Den Leader resources, please watch it. It's not that long, and it answers most of the questions that you have. It can be frustrating when you're trying to give all this information to people. It's on your website, it's there, and they don't look at it. But again, they do have to meet you halfway. Further down, there's a little bit more about, again, what St. George requires of its leaders. We have to sign St. George's and the diocese ethics documents. But there's also, resources for the committee. Not just for leaders, but also for the committee. And we also have event resources. This actually looks a little different now. I've revamped it some, but with the Pinewood Derby coming up, a lot of our new families didn't know how to make cars or design cars, so I hyperlinked several useful websites and videos, that they can refer to, as well as for the Rain Gutter Regatta. It's a little bit lesser race, but that's also fun. Now, I did this as an example of what a good website can look like for a unit. I love the Sam Houston Council's website, and if I could copy it, I totally would. They, like me, they also have hyperlinked. If you click on any of these logos, it'll take you to rank-specific information. But it has general information and specific to their unit information. And what I love about their resources page is it also has den and pack meeting ideas. If you're running low on ideas for what to do at a pack meeting, check out Sam Houston Council's website, because they've got some great ideas for, pack meeting themes, activities, stuff like that, den meeting themes. They've got it, separated by month and, by year. They could go 5 whole years and never repeat things. This is very well done. I dream of the day that our website looks like this. So newsletters and print announcements. Not everybody has a daily routine or a job that requires them to be on a computer or check their email. This was actually a concept I had to learn. Quite a few of our parents, work out on construction, or, they're not sitting at a desk, or in the case, we have several doctors. One's an ER doctor. He's not checking his email regularly, at least not during the day. So, take that into account with your communications. Some people only check their email once a week, or they still have, dumb phones. As I mentioned, one dad in our unit still got a flip phone. Newsletters can be handed out at unit events. It's easy to slap one up on the refrigerator. I make a monthly newsletter, and I send it out, I try to get it out by the 3rd of each month. And it tells what's upcoming in the next 2 months. If it's a busy month, it might only focus on the upcoming month. I try to do, a repeat of the announcements, also information about council level things coming up. I also try to include some fun stuff like a craft or something that somebody can make. But I want this to be something they can refer back to so that they know we have things coming up. And this is what our newsletter looks like. And on the right is also what our printout of pack announcements look like. And this is what we hand out at our meetings. I try to keep our newsletters to 4 pages or less. They usually end up being about 2 or 3 pages. You don't want to overload them with too much information, try to keep what is necessary. But on the front cover of each newsletter, I have upcoming dates to remember. Here's when the PAC meeting is. The Weeblos are going camping with the troop on this date. Where the PAC is visiting the legislature on this date. And the communication where I speak directly to the parents is stuff that I would say to them in person. Like don't forget that we still need volunteers for our blue and gold committee and things like that. And it goes into further depth further on in the newsletter. The announcements that we hand out at the PAC meeting it always tells people look at the newsletter for, and handouts for upcoming stuff. Any meetings that are coming up, reminding scouts that they should still be pursuing requirements and where they should be. So, these are things that get handed out. They're put into the hands of the parents. And, we have gotten a lot less of people saying, I don't know what's going on since we started doing this. So some points to remember. When using communications with the youth, make sure that at least two adults are on the communication to maintain 2 deep leadership. The teen scouts prefer things like Snapchat and Discord, and the leaders must be willing to use them if this is what they want to use. Because the thing to remember is they're going to use them anyway. We can have official like GroupMe groups that we can force them to be on, but they are still going to use their own forms of communication. Leaders must be willing to meet parents and scouts where they are at and what they are already using. Use the line of sight concept. Be willing to change first. Don't try to change 100 families to meet your needs. I had to give this up with band. I wanted to use band with our unit. Again, I thought it was the superior app for what we needed, but I was not going to try to change the minds of over 70 families who were already using GroupMe. I was the one that had to change. And consider who will maintain these avenues when you move on. My son has recently graduated to the troop. I remain as the PAC secretary for the remainder of the year, but I handed over the advancement chair to our Cub Master's wife and some other duties as well. So consider, what you're doing. Is this sustainable? Is this something you can train someone else to do? If something's not working, is it something that can evolve for the next person? Remember that new parents join every year, so take yearly surveys and ask at end of the year surveys what communications they prefer. Ask at the beginning of the year surveys. Be willing to change what you're doing to meet the most number of people. And have methods to confirm information like the calendar or scout book, which uses a calendar that allows for lists for outings and requirements. Parents can refer to them as needed. Try not to have more than 2 calendars being used, or make sure everyone knows which one is the master. For ours, it's the Google Calendar, and parents could subscribe to it. Now, yes, Scoutbook does have a calendar that people can subscribe to, but what we are discovering in our unit is that very few parents know how to or even use Scoutbook. We try to tell them that they have to create a my.scouting.org account, and that is their credentials to log into Scoutbook. It goes right over their heads. I've handed out printouts. I have something on the website. People in our unit just do not use Scoutbook. Now, the leadership uses it. Obviously, we track advancements. We use it to send out announcements, reminders, things like that. But Scoutbook has been known to mess up. In our case, we've had the wrong date or the wrong time put on the reminders, because when you put something in a Scoutbook calendar, it likes to use whatever previous date and time or day of the week or time you used for a similar event. So, for example, if we did a camp out, on a Saturday back in December, Scoutbook wants to use that previous format, and if you don't change it and then press set, it will revert back to the old one. And this is a bit of a pain in the butt to remember. So we had Scoutbook sending out reminders for wrong times, wrong dates. And then we had like at least 2/3 of our families not even on Scoutbook. So we use Scoutbook for tracking advancements, for running reports, for advancing people. The committee uses it for administration duties. Our PAC doesn't really use it for calendar or communications. On the other hand, the new troop that my son is in does use Scoutbook for these things. So thankfully, I'm already pretty familiar with Scout Book. It's not hard for me to switch over to using it for communications, but I do know that this might be a problem from our families coming up. Because right now they know that our Google Calendar and our Google email are our primary means of communication. Have a method that parents can instantly get a hold of. Um, like I've mentioned before, oh, the campground was hit by a tornado. It's the wrong meeting night. Little Jimmy came down with C. diff on the way up the camp, and they're not coming. That was a true story. This allows the leadership to issue quick changes to plans. Go to the south gate, not the north gate. That's what GroupMe does for us, or Remind for other units. Consider having a monthly Zoom parent meeting, a standing meeting, like maybe the last Saturday of every month or something like that, that allows people to log in as needed and ask questions. Make it an open forum. It's also a great way to get volunteers. I have pushed to do this. I have mentioned this before. It hasn't been met with a lot of enthusiasm, but some of the scouters that I talk to online say that they do this for their units, and it's great, especially for the new parents. For our camp out, I had an open Zoom meeting the weekend before so that new families could log in and ask questions. Some of them had never been camping before. And I thought it would be a great thing to do on a regular basis, have an open Zoom meeting that people can log into and have face-to-face questions. Because, after a packed meeting when everything's kind of crazy and you've got people lining up to talk to you, people aren't able to get the attention that you need to give them. This works for some units, so it might be something to consider. And remember that the written word doesn't convey the tone of voice or body language, so being abrupt might come across as being scolding or bossy. It's like, why aren't you all opening your emails? Consider how somebody might be reading what you write before you send it. And try to choose a platform that allows you to see who is reading and receiving the messages. This isn't always easy. I know that Google will allow you to do this on a certain level. I think you have to have I'm not sure about this, but I think you have to have like a corporate account with Google to see that. But if you've got an app or something that you're using where you can see who is reading the messages, then you can kind of get an idea of who might need different method of communication. It might take upward of 3 times for someone to hear something on one of the platforms, so don't rely on just one. Some people take as much as 7 to 12 times receiving a message for it to get across due to the fact that we all get a mass influx of information we get daily. Just look at your email inbox sometime and just see what you get on a daily basis. See how easy it is for, emails to get lost in that shuffle, even if it isn't all spam. Some people need to have the print, they need to be told in person, and they need to get the email. That tends to work in our unit. And again, it's because we're dealing with younger children. It's a recent phenomenon to expect people to respond within hours. It used to be a rule of thumb to give people at least 2 days to respond. Now we want instant gratification. Oh, we sent the message on GroupMe. Has anybody read it? Nobody's responded. Nobody's liked it. You got to be patient with people. Sometimes they just don't see the message until later that night. Asking parents and having good communication in place inspires confidence in the parents, especially the new ones. If your communication is all in a disarray for your unit, they're not going to have a whole lot of confidence that the leadership knows what it's doing and that it can provide a good scouting program for their kids. When I first came on and, communications was just a mess, it was a little disconcerting. It's like, okay, well, what did I get my kid into? But, once we started getting the communication sorted out, it did inspire more confidence in the parents, like, hey, these people do know what they're doing. I can ask them questions. And ask them in person at the meetings, are you getting the messages? Is anybody not getting the messages? We sent an email out. Did anybody not get it? Okay, see me after the meeting. You want to make sure, check in with people, make sure that they're getting at least one way that you're communicating. I need to get this patch. We all need this patch, just 1 hour a week, 1 hour a week per kid. What are your preferred methods that work for your unit and why? Think about other units you've been in or other groups, not necessarily Scout related. What are some upcoming means of communication? During the pandemic, we all started doing video chats. In my unit, we did video den meetings over Zoom. We did virtual pack meetings. We did virtual campouts, where we all camped out in our living room and made s'mores in our microwaves. These are all means of communication, and it was stuff that we hadn't even thought of doing only the year before. But it just kind of fell on us, and we adapted. So what are some things that the Teen Scouts are using that you should be aware of? Do some forms of communication work for different groups over others? Obviously, yes. For bigger groups, you need to communicate one way, but for smaller groups of older kids, they communicate a different way. So this is this is the end of our presentation. I hope you learned something from it, and if you have any questions or comments, be sure to leave them in the comments section, and we'll see you out there in Scout World.